Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors. The off-season's a great time to rehab your gear, so head on over to Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Today's show is also made possible by Hunting Beast Gear, innovators in mobile hunting gear and the designers of the Beast Sticks and Beast Stand. Check out the latest products at www.huntingbeastgear.com. And now, on to the podcast.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Hunting Beast Report. I am your host, Scott Biskobing, and I am joined, as always, by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dan Infalt, the Hunting Beast. What's up, Dan?
Hey, not a whole lot.
Yeah, sorry about that little last thing there. That was kind of weird. It was like everything was double looping or something. We were getting like crazy feedback. But seems like we got it worked out, which is always a good thing. And we're not going to take too much time here, but we do want a quick mention, once again, like we did last week here, that Dan, myself, Uncle Lou from Stealth Outdoors, we're all going to be heading out next week, Thursday, for Huntstock. It's a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8th, 9th, and 10th, out in Westminster, Massachusetts. So it sounds like there's some tickets available yet. Tons of fantastic legends are going to be talking and doing seminars, such as Dan Infalt himself, the great Barry Wenzel, John Eberhard, Hal Blood, and many more. So if you haven't and you want to head out east, or you're from out east, or you're anywhere in that area, make sure you get your tickets for Huntstock. We're really excited to head out there next week, Thursday, and hang out with all of you. So with all that said, we're really excited for tonight's guest. You guys know him and love him. And without further ado, let's bring him on, Mr. Jared Sheffler.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. That was weird. I apologize. We haven't had that one before. We've had weird things happen in the past. It's technology, you know. I mean, it's funny.
I had a technical thing come up about a month ago, editing-wise. It cost me 2 days, and it's like something that I never did figure out, but I figured out a workaround around it. So
yeah.
I'm very familiar with it.
I'm sure you are. Yeah, technology, it's a fickle bitch. But no, thanks for taking some time out of your evening here tonight. If you've been following along here, as our followers have been, we have been kind of plugging along with this, what we've been calling our Top 5 series. And in this series here, we are having our guests break down 5 of their top 5. Doesn't have to be your favorite buck, but memorable, something that relates to, a good story that went behind it. Like, what caused you to hunt that particular area? Did you have history with this deer? Did you go in on a hunch? Were you looking at maps? Kind of some of the tactics that went involved in some of these successful hunts. So you had sent us 5 bucks here, and we're going to go ahead and break down all those like we have been here.
Okay.
I'm just going to double check here. All right. Let's go ahead. Yeah, let's get right into buck number 1, and you can go ahead and give us the year and stuff.
That was 2006. There's not a lot of details about or particular reasons why I hunted where I did. I'll just kind of kick the story off. I don't even think I was planning on hunting that night. I had a transmission go out on my truck at that time, and I had this Dodge Diesel mid-90s, and the 5th gear went out, and I was dropping the transmission out of the truck and fighting it, and it was kind of whooping my ass. And I think I actually got the transmission pulled, but it dropped on me, and I was just like, all right, I'm out of here. Yeah, and at that time in my life, I was very I had kind of migrated to a little bit more of a calculated hunter type, strategic, and I had gotten to the point where I was beating their nose. I had a system, and it just worked really good for me. And up until that point. But 2006 was that season was a very crucial season for me because I just kind of broke some of those things that I was so attached to. And that particular hunt, what made that hunt cool, that's not a public land deer. At that time, I had some permission for a private, some pretty good private land on this farm in Buffalo County.
Okay.
And there was other guys that could hunt it. It wasn't leased or anything. But so that wasn't a public land deer. But anyways, I was fighting this transmission, and I'm all full of tranny fluid. And I remember there was tranny fluid all over my shoes and stuff. And I think I threw one of my olive tops on. I don't know. I might have even had blue jeans on. And just,
Sure.
You know what? Screw it. I don't care. I had for over a couple of year periods kind of figured out all the tricks that I could beat their nose and all that. And I felt I was so trapped and locked into my system, if you will, that I kind of almost was broke that night of like my chains a bit of like, hey, I can go hunt. Yeah, I might be full of training fluid. They might smell me. Who cares? Like whatever. And I went to there was this creek bottom that had a field on each side of it and a little tree line that kind of went through the creek. And a lot of times during the rut, and this was in the rut, a lot of times does would come down in there and bucks would end up coming out of the ridge system. Now I couldn't hunt the ridge system where they would all come out of, but I could hunt them once they got into the creek. That farmer would let me hunt after gun season. But so I went there because usually I could at least get eyes on something, even if it was across the line, it's like, ooh, there's a big one. Maybe I'll catch him tomorrow or whatever. So I go down there. I'm full of this tranny fluid and whatnot. And I see this buck. He's with a doe. He ended up being the smallest buck I ever shot on that in the time that I hunted that property.
Sure.
And what made that hunt so cool for me is he was up there on that neighbor's property, and the doe all of a sudden they were several hundred yards out. The doe made a mad dash towards the creek, and I just instinct moment, I just like took off on a mad dash. Like I got to get right here. And like, it was like, they should see me doing this, but what do I got to lose? He's not that big of a buck, whatever. I don't care. And I just like dashed across the cornfield as they're running towards the cornfield kind of, and they never seen me. And I got there just in time, got the arrow knocked as fast as I could, and was drawn back. The doe bounded through the creek. The buck stopped right in the creek. I'm coming to full draw, and I don't know, the creek was probably, I don't know, that deep or so. So the water line was not quite to his chest, but pretty close. I come to full draw. He was taking a drink, looks right up at me. I'm skylined. And at that moment I sent it, and, I had to like reach over, the arrow blew through him, and I had to reach over and pull the arrow out of the bank. And it all happened so quick. And I was just like, wow, that jacked me up. And, the season before that, I won't go into too many details on that. I shot the biggest buck I'd ever shot in my life at that point. And I was also kind of trapped in the inches game. And prior to shooting that particular deer, I had a number in my head. The deer didn't score that number, and it was still a really cool hunt, but it ruined it for me. And then now I shoot this buck that's way smaller. It jacked me up. The way the whole hunt went down. It just kind of got my wheels turning about like, okay, I love chasing big bucks, but there's a lot more. I maybe got sidetracked the last few years. I maybe got sidetracked with putting too much importance on inches or that. And yeah, I've always loved chasing big bucks, but I was kind of trapped in that a little bit. And even in this photo, I mentioned this to Dan the other day, even in this photo, you could see I'm like pushing him up there to make him. I mean, that buck's 115, spindly racked. I mean, he is 20, as I remember, 20 inches wide, but he's spindly, and I mean, maybe 115, 20-inch 8-pointer, but I'm like pushing him out there, trying to make him look bigger than he is and the whole 9 yards. But the whole hunt was so cool for me. And that's why that buck made the list. I think the reason it's one of my favorites is it made me kind of stop and think about, like, okay, I still love chasing big bucks and everything, but there's a lot more to it. And I'm maybe, at that time in my life, I was too trapped in the inches kind of mentality.
How old were you?
I was 21.
Listening to that story, it reminds me of that, I've seen this over and over again. Most people, when they come into hunting, they start out there chasing deer, they get a deer, then they're chasing bucks, they get a buck, then they want a big buck, and they get a decent buck, and then they get another decent buck, and then they think they got to play this part. I mean, it comes to them like, if I want to be a big hunter, I got to do all this stuff, and they start doing the mainstream stuff like buying the camo, buying the scent shield, and playing the games. You know what I mean? And It's like, when you're telling that story, it reminds me of, like, there's a point when you go from that to you mature as a hunter and you start realizing that all that stuff's kind of bull crap. And it seems like to me that this hunt reminds you of or like, even if you don't realize it, it's the turning point.
Yep.
Really became a hunter. And I think that's why it's probably special to you.
Yeah. I think I think I was bound in ways that were making me not enjoy hunting as much.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that particular hunt kind of broke me in one particular aspect of the chain that I was bound to. And there was another one that season. We won't go into the details on that, but it was another, like, food for thought kind of thing, that entire season, that was the season actually prior to me filming the first season of Whitetail Adrenaline.
Sure.
So, it was a defining season. I was kind of redefining some things in me for hunting and things. So yeah, I think you're right on. It's like, I've seen that a lot too with hunters. They go through the stages and everybody's kind of got to, go through the stages and figure it out, So
I remember as a young man stocking up on a buck that was probably about 22 inches inside, and just had this old mature buck with big bases, came around and had a fork on each side. It was a 4-pointer. And I passed that buck because of score as a young guy. And it haunts me nowadays. I love to have that buck on the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was in that stage where you think they got to have a score. You think they got to be a certain size. And, luckily I got out of that quick. But that buck still haunts me.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think guys or hunters, guys, gals, I think that like you said, there's stages in that, and what stage you land on doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you're going to stay either. I went through a phase there where I was chasing bigger bucks in that, and then I went through a slump in that, and I was filming my hunts, and I was just kind of generally frustrated and not enjoying hunting anymore. And I'm like, no, you know what? The next 120, 130 inch buck I get a chance at, I'm going to go ahead and take. And because it got me fired up, because all this time I'm hunting some of these larger bucks and not able to close the deal for whatever reason, and just kind of being frustrated, and then kind of settling into, like, you know what? I want to hunt because hunting is fun and I like to kill deer. You know what I mean? So, and then I got that monkey off my back, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
now let's get back after it again here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and two, I think because we're human, it can come back around, and it can it could re-enter in a way that it's like a person can become re-trapped without realizing it too. Like, just because that happened to me back then, it doesn't mean that I couldn't get myself re-trapped down the road in that inches game or whatever. I don't think the inches game necessarily, and I'll give a short example of that is the last several seasons, so not just me, but as a company, the guys involved, we've been very like insanely blessed with some of the caliber of deer we've
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and it's gotten to the point where it's like we almost feel like we have to get on those. I kind of realized it last season. Like I was like, well, we're not trying, we're not really setting out to try to do that, but they're like popping up in front, and then it's like, well, I have to dedicate my time to go after this thing now, and now I'm like entering the bondage trap a little bit, because it's like, what do you do if it's a, say, 180-inch deer, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to catch him on public here in the next 5 to 7 days. I better not go after that 140 if it gets in the way, or I shouldn't say get in the way, but the opportunity. And it's like, should I be doing that or should I not? Now, I didn't actually have that particular scenario go down with a 140, but the other way around, I did, but I didn't get that particular deer, but I did actually go after a smaller deer in there, because I was like, I'm not allowing myself to get trapped to this giant. Well, that's the day I shouldn't have done that, because I would have killed the magnum. I found out by the end of that day. So, but it's that's just an example of like, it can come back around and re-trap a person a little bit in that. So.
Do you, and this is just a little bit off topic, but do you feel pressure to shoot a certain caliber or certain size buck or certain age class of buck in that, because you're putting the DVDs out? Do you feel like there's an expectation that your fans and your followers, people who are buying the DVDs, expect that increase? Or do you think at times it's to a level of detriment because it becomes maybe somewhat unrealistic or feels unattainable to maybe your fan base?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think that I'm trapped in that. Of course, I've got a little bit of an excuse hunting with a longbow, so.
Yeah, right.
So I don't feel like I'm trapped in that. But I will say, if me or one of the other guys gets on a big mature buck, of course I would love to see them shoot that. And so I got to watch myself, because I might have influence on them, in a way that makes them feel like they have to dedicate their effort and time to that giant, when maybe they just want to go shoot a big buck themselves,
Yeah.
Or go shoot, just a big buck and not,
Right.
So there's maybe unrecognized pressure that happens there, and I think the rest of the guys would have to speak for that, but I think I probably have done that before. Like, if they get on a big mature buck, of course I want them to get that big buck, big mature buck. But so yeah, I think this is all good food for thought. It
was something I was curious about. Just wondering, like, what do you pay attention to feedback that you get maybe on social media? Like, what are your fans enjoying seeing in that? Or is it really just about like, look, this is what we're doing, and we're going to put out the best possible product we can, because we don't really control.
Yeah,
we don't have any control over what's going to happen.
Right. What I will say is I don't feel like I allow other people to dictate how our hunting or what we're shooting or not shooting.
Right.
I don't think I'm in danger in any sort of way of that. I think
that's kind of obvious. I mean, if you and there's a lot of people who do, but if you let that peer pressure influence you become fake.
Yeah, and you're not.
What really in videos, me and you both, and I can see it in you just watching your stuff, that you're out there hunting the way you want to hunt and you're recording it.
Yeah.
And if you alter from that, you'll become fake and people will know you're fake. You'll still have an audience, but not much you want.
Right.
People gravitate to both of us. There's people who hate it And there's people who will tell me, you got to hold out for something bigger. You got to do this. You got to do that. I don't have to do anything. I do what Dan does, and you do what Jared does, because that's why we're successful, is because we're our own people. We're not fabricated people from what people tell us to be.
Right.
You know?
Right. I think that's a great point on that. I think especially nowadays, we're talking about this hunt 21, or whatever it is. Maybe I'm doing my math wrong. I was 21. So 19 years ago, didn't really have the social medias then. Yeah. But I think that's another, danger trap for people that, it can get a little like, well, I have to, gotta live up to an image that maybe I didn't intend to create, but by default of, killing X amount of big bucks or something, an image has now come forth that now I feel like I have to live up to that, even though that was all purely or authentically done. Maybe I feel like I've got to live up to that expectation. I didn't intend to set that in. I was just hunting and I killed some big bucks and people love that. And now that is true that I would say that would be in that particular case, a pure and true thing. If it was just done without the dictation or whatever we were talking about, an influence from other people, but now that becomes the image of that individual. And then it's like, it's hunting, we've went through seasons where it's like things didn't come together very well, and,
because that's hunting.
That's hunting. And that's sometimes the way it goes. But,
it kind of reminds me of, you ever see those videos where somebody will take a bow and a gun? That drives me freaking nuts. I can't stand it. I'm like, what are you doing? That's not bow hunting.
Yeah.
That's like you got the excuse of the gun if you need it. Bow hunting is one-on-one with that deer. You don't have a gun in case you can't shoot it with your bow.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that just reads me as fake. This guy just has to have a big buck no matter what. Where a genuine guy doesn't care if he fails. I mean, he wants to succeed. Yeah. But failure is just part of it. It's part of the path,
Yeah. Well, I mean, too, like you just mentioned that it's like my longstanding joke with when I started hunting with a longbow was, well, I was missing so many with a compound. I needed a better excuse. It's like, I'm already showing my failures and mistakes. Like, who cares? And that's one thing that the video production, we've always been very adamant about keeping that. Like, we're showing it like, it's a hero zero deal. It's like sometimes things come together great. And sometimes it's like, wow, that one really kicked my ass, but people love that. They love seeing you get your ass kicked.
Right.
Because they can relate. And I think that's what the biggest thing is, because we've all been there. We've all got our ass kicked out there.
Right.
And it's
gotta be real though. You can't be faking that.
Exactly. That's,
you go back in time to when I first started doing my DVDs. At that time frame, back in those days, and Jared can relate because he started in the same time frame. Everybody had kill videos. That's all they were. It was just kill videos.
Right. Yep.
And it was like I was putting out the first videos that everybody was getting. I mean, where it was going out like mainstream, that had failures in them, where you just fail, and then you succeed. And people love that, and they ate that up. And the reason is they felt inadequate because everything they watched, all these guys are killing all these bucks. They never fail. And it's like, man, this guy is so great. What they don't know is that guy hunted 100 times to shoot that one deer that season. That's, I love the failures because of that, because it shows people. And that's what people like in the audience when they're watching is they like to know that you're not some God. And there's too many people that play they are. They will not show a mistake. They will not show an error. They will not show a flaw. Yeah. They won't show a screw up. Yeah. I love to see Jared screw up and just say, what was I thinking? I was stupid.
Well, that's a great point. Back in the early days, I thought about this on a deep level, and I was like, I think people will love the screw ups in our first video had a deer that I hit that we didn't recover, and like back in that era, you didn't see much of that on hunting content. It was
Right.
kind of like something that was very rare to ever see it. But I was, like, that's kind of risky, but that's the way I want to do it. I want to show it. And I thought about it, and I'm like, if we as a company are willing to put our failures and screw ups on the record over the course of many years, we're going to get really good at what we're doing in a lot of ways, because we're not just facing where we failed. We're broadcasting it to everyone that watches it.
Sure. All right. Well, I want to move this train along here, but I do want to just pop up a couple quick questions here. This is actually one from a little bit earlier. This is from Kidney Stones. My first question is, how would you spot and stalk hill country habitat with a bow along the Mississippi River in Wisconsin on public land?
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's it.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yep. I got that. So I'm assuming the bluff country stuff is what he's
I would assume,
referring to, because which I have a decent amount of experience doing that, not so much in recent years, but back in a lot of them earlier videos, I did that quite a bit in that type of country. So it depends on the situation. One thing that I found in that particular country, a lot of times I would actually go low, not always though, and to get my visual when I'm still hunting through the timber. I could get my visual a lot easier being low often, but there's some risks in doing that. And once I had that visual, I could recourse, and a lot of times I couldn't come in from the low side, but it would at least help me get that visual to start with. The other thing I would do quite often in Wisconsin, especially once I kind of had been on the piece a couple of times and got an idea where the bedding areas were and whatnot, which in that country, a lot of times it's pretty close to the top is what I found, or, very close. Not necessarily always, but that particular type of hill country, that's what I found quite a bit. Dan's hunted that a lot, so he could confirm that way more than I could.
Third.
What's that?
Top third.
Yep. So what I would do in those particular cases where I didn't have a visual, but I kind of had an idea that, hey, this is a bedding area up here, I wouldn't often go low in that particular case. I'd get the wind working just barely right for me to work it, and I'd move in across that top quarter, top third of that ridge, just barely making that wind work for me, because most of the time, if you come in with too perfect of a wind, they get you by eyes first. And so I found that was a pretty good trick. If I kept that wind so it was just barely working for me, that allowed me to spot them first before they'd pick me off. So that was a couple of tricks that worked, that I seemed to find worked pretty good in the hill country. But it depends on the piece. Going low can be risky on the scent side in a lot of cases, where the scent's coming up to them in a certain way too. So you got to read each piece, and that obviously it depends on the day and the circumstances, the weather and things like that, what you can and can't do or get away with kind of there. So
sure.
And one thing with that too is, it's a good idea. Like, I'd always like the rate that I'm still hunting through that country. It's dictated a lot of times by the conditions of how much wind I've got and things like that to cover my noise and my movement enough to where I can pick them up visually before they ever pick me up. So on windier days where there's a lot of motion in the woods, I'm not always, because it's hill country, but I'm maybe a little more easily able to control the wind. I can move at a little bit quicker rate in certain cases. So I always kind of thought about that. So if I'm getting into thicker stuff, obviously I've got to slow it way down a bunch. Otherwise they're going to hear me or see me. And once they hear something, even if they can't see you yet, they're already looking for what's maybe coming. So that's a couple of other things that I picked up on.
All right, I'm gonna pull up one more, and then we're gonna move on here, guys, to the second buck here. And this is from Brian. Jared, how many states have you been fortunate enough to hunt, and which one is your favorite?
Ooh. Off the top of my head, I've probably hunted / filmed in probably around 15
Wow.
states, I would say. So yeah, and then which one's my favorite one?
Yeah, which one's your favorite?
It's varied. You know, it's hard for me to you know, for a while it was Kansas, but then I got sick of hunting the prairies. I still hunt the prairies, you know, but I got kind of like, it's boring to me. You know, it's not boring once you find a mega giant on the prairie or anywhere for that matter. But Iowa is overall probably my favorite because it's got a blend of different types of country, you know, so I don't have to stick to prairie. It's got some swamp, not as much swamp as Wisconsin. That's what I grew up hunting in quite a bit of swamp. Had a big public land swamp right off of our farm. Actually, there's public land swamp that borders the farm I grew up on too. Not part of the main big swamp, but I grew up there in quite a bit of swamps. But then I went through a period, which was in the videos, where I was getting poison sumac pretty bad. And we were doing, as a crew, we were doing much better in the hill country on the video side. So I haven't really done too much with swamps for quite a few years because of that. But in Iowa, it's got more diverse terrain and stuff. So and it has big bucks. So, and which are fun, but that could easily change down the road too. My favorite state, you know. So I mean, I'm kind of missing Wisconsin. You know, I've had moments where I'm missing Wisconsin. You know, got my ass kicked a lot more there, but you know, compared to Iowa. But yeah.
All right, very good. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on here to buck number 2. And this one looks like it's from back in the day as well there, a young Jared Scheffler there.
Yeah. That was 2008. That was an Iowa public land hunt. That's on the first all public land season, so that would have been our second video. Okay. That was a pretty cool hunt for me because our first video had some ground hunting on it, but I was playing the tree stand game too. And quite a bit of it was tree stand. And that particular season, Jim kind of proposed, my cousin Jim proposed, what if we just do all public after the first season? He's like, oh, you know, Jim, everybody knows, or a lot of people that have watched the video, you know, Jim, oh, you know, and I was like, yeah, I like the idea of that because I actually was getting that private that I was talking about with that 06 buck. I'd hunted that for a few years, and it was cool and everything. But that was another thing I kind of began to realize is, well, I knew the property so well. And then by the time hunting season got there, I knew what was there for deer, for bucks.
Okay.
You know, you'd have a drifter roll in during rut or something. But, you know, it was too – I didn't grow up like that. I grew up more like free ranging, you know, so where I didn't know about all the deer, you know, and the details and all that. So that was another trap that I kind of realized I had got myself into. And I call it a trap because it wasn't fulfilling me. For a lot of people, that might bring them a lot of joy and fulfillment. But for me, it was actually not. And I had done a hunt prior that was just completely off the cuff, and it ignited me. So this particular, I'm getting way sidetracked here. So getting back to this hunt, that particular season, we did quite a bit of tree stand hunt. Well, we were getting our asses kicked, you know, or so I thought. I mean, we weren't doing very well on the bow side of things, and on that particular video, that's the only bow kill. Now, that's our first all public land season. It's called Scratching the Surface, but that's the only bow kill we had. And we drove, Andy and I we drove through the night from Wisconsin to Iowa, and I had it in my head. I looked at some maps and stuff. I kind of had it in my head where I wanted to get, and there was this small creek, and we needed to cross that. And I brought knee highs, and I thought we'd be fine. Well, they got some rain. Very far from fine, not crossing that. We were walking in there with the tree stands and got there, and I'm like, well, that ain't going to work. But I'm like, I got to get in there. I got to, the other route in was a way long hike, a couple miles or so. So we ended up driving around to the other side. It was a big section, bigger than a mile by a mile. So we drove around so we could come in the other route. And because I was kind of like, well, this creek is probably going to cause people to not be able to access it as much. That's kind of why I picked that particular spot, is I felt like the access was more difficult maybe for guys to get into. So that's why
Sure.
I kind of identified.
That makes sense.
Nowadays I think people have wisened up to that quite a bit, to where it's like the stuff that looks good on an aerial, it's like it's getting pounded. But back in that era, that's why I picked it. So got to get there, Well, by the time we got in there, and we had driven through the night with just enough time to get there and hopefully get the tree stands up before sunup, which would have worked had we been able to cross the creek. But by the time we got actually in there, it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got in there, or something like that. It was a couple hours into the day. And we had jumped a big buck with a doe about 400 yards or so prior, or something around there. About 400 yards prior to where we decided to throw these tree stands up. So we threw the tree stands up. And back then I was around 150, 55 pounds. I didn't handle the cold very well. And I was pretty sweaty from getting in there.
Sure.
Long walk and everything. Well, we didn't last too long in the tree stands before I started to get pretty cold, and was also getting bored a little bit and curious what the rest of this looked like. We had tree stands up there, but so we climbed down from the tree stands after, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, hour and a half. And I'm going into like still hunting. I'm kind of scouting, but I'm hunting, and we made it maybe 100 yards, and I spot this big buck in the timber with a doe locked up, and there's some satellite bucks, and I believe this was the buck we had actually bumped on our walk in. So it took 5 hours from the time I spotted him. We had to change routes a couple of times. We tried going in, and then it's like the wind was getting finicky, and we couldn't get quite close enough. We backed out. We could feel the wind was starting to shift. Nowadays you got the app, so you can just pull up the app and see what the wind's doing the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But back then you had to run a little bit more off of, like, I can feel it switching. This could get risky if it switches more to the west right now. North is working, and it felt like it was switching more to the west, which would make sense with primary winds. But you kind of had to run off it, and you didn't have the app to tell you, like, hey, in 2 hours it's going to be full west.
It's going to switch up big time.
So we made that decision. We pulled out, made this big loop, several 100-yard loop, had to lose our visual on it all and come in another route. And we ended up, I got to say I think, because I could be wrong on this. I think we maybe had to recourse another time on that. We got our visual back, but then realized this route's not going to work, I think is what happened there. I'm sure it's in the video, but anyways, it took 5 hours snaking around, jiving the satellite bucks. I think there were 7, if I remember right. I think there were 7 total satellite bucks that we had to kind of play the games with in that timber before I finally got the shot. And it was a 1/4-2 shot. It one lunged him. He went several 100 yards, but we got him. Well, then, we had driven through the night, and I had worked the whole day before. So I hadn't slept in, I don't know how many hours by that point, but a long time. But we're jacked up, got this buck once we walked all the way back to the car. It was a one long hit, knew he went several 100 yards, gave him quite a bit of time, went back to the vehicle, regrouped a bit, come back out there, find him. And then it was like, how the heck do we get this thing out of here? Like, and I am not kidding you. It's in the video. I think it was 12 hours from the time to get him out of there. It was like 1 a.m. by the time we got that buck out of there. I found some kid at a Subway. We hadn't eaten all day either. We hadn't ate all day. We finally, it was like 6 or something like that at night. I was like, they had the $5 footlongs back then.
Yeah.
We were
now you're dating yourself.
We were running on a tight budget too. I didn't have much funds to spend on anything. And so we went to this Subway and I ran into this kid and I'm like, hey man, because there was this way that we could get him out because he died right on the edge of public. So there was this route out. And I'd be giving away the details too much of potentially the location if I shared what that is. But there was a way that we could actually take this thing out. And all he had was a dirt bike. And I was like, all I had to spare was $20. And I said, I said, well, if it's worth $20 to you. And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a hand. It took 2 hours with the deer cart pulling with the dirt bike to get that thing back and out of there. But anyways, that hunt ended up being very fulfilling to me because I think it was the first like really difficult like spot and stalk that I had done on video that we captured really, really well. And all the jive-jiving and reroutes and jive-jiving the satellite bucks and then having a pretty tough season altogether, that hunt made that pretty special. And for a long time, that was a lot of people's favorite hunt on the series as well. So yeah, that one made the cut for that reason.
That's a great story. Dan, what's your longest drag out?
Well, 2 miles.
But
I shot one with hunting with Mario one time. We shot it in the evening, and we had never been to this area before. We went way back. It was 2 miles from the truck, and I shot this 8-pointer, and it took us a while to find it. There was no blood trail. The arrow stayed inside of it, never exited, and we finally found it in a dense swamp. And then we went all the way back to the trucks to drop the stands and the bows and stuff, and call for help. We called for help before we went to the truck, but we met up with people at the truck, or 2 people, went back in, got the buck and dragged it out. And by the time we got out, it was the sun had risen, been about an hour of daylight, and that was an evening hunt. So it was an all-night drag out on a work night.
Oh,
yeah, that was my toughest one.
I'm going to pull up one more quick question here. This is again from Brian. He says, are you hunting swampland? And I'm assuming, Brian, this is directed at Jared, because if you're asking Dan, then welcome to the show.
As far as I kind of mentioned this earlier, I haven't really done much of the swamp hunting since around that, what was it? 2012 maybe or so. Somewhere around there. I haven't done, much swamp hunting, a bit, but back then I used to do a lot. But,
sure.
That one video, my eye is pretty much swollen completely shut from the sumac. So.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't even bother me. Walk right through it.
Yeah, some it doesn't. For years it didn't. I'd get poison ivy, but I also had heard, and I think this is probably true, some swamps have it and some don't. And I think the swamp kind of region where I grew up maybe just didn't have it because I never really got it when I hunted them back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, there's not that many big bucks generally there where I grew up in that particular swamp. So it gets pressured a lot.
Sure.
There's always a few, but.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 3 here. And I think this is one that a lot of you guys were hoping that that Jared was going to talk about tonight. I know it came up in previous comments here, so let's go ahead and bring it up.
Yep.
I think we're all familiar with this one, but if not, let's hear the story.
Yeah. Well, it's the craziest story of all of them. So I'll this was Chancey and I's first. So Chancey in this photo next to the van, he's on the right. And that was our first hunt to get where we hunted together, really. And I was on him for a couple of years, like, get Kansas, man. Like he's a big buck killer. Like, and I'm like, they're here, man. Like you gotta get out here with me, man. This is I knew he'd have a ball. So finally, this particular season, okay, I'm doing it. I'm going out there with you. And so he got a tag, I had a tag. We start off, and this particular area, we had done pretty well the last few years before that on finding big bucks on walk-in hunting and being able to hunt them. But when we started out, it wasn't until day 5 before we actually had a situation where we could go after a big buck. And Chancey was up to bat. And day 2, we saw this buck. He was probably 2 miles from public. And that was before we were doing the uncuffed by permission stuff. So it wasn't even an option that we were considering to try to get permission where we saw this buck. But we just kind of like, holy, Chancey knows big deer better than I do. And he's like, dude, that thing's world class. And we knew it was big. And it's like, well, closest public, looked at it, it's 2 miles. Like, yeah, there's a chance he ends up there, but what are you going to do? You going to wait? So we just kind of kept doing our thing and kept covering ground and trying to, out in that prairie country, you're covering a lot of ground till you get your visual a lot of times. And so we were into day 5 and of that hunt. We got on a big buck, didn't come together. And then the next day we got on that big buck, didn't come together again. And Chancey's like, I'm going to film you. You're up. And we didn't have much time left in the day. And we went by this piece of public, and this is day 6 of that hunt. Caught this glimpse, and it was this buck. And he was on the back edge of the public. He was on the public. It looked like probably 80, 100 yards. We make a mad dash sprint. We don't have a lot of time. Get out there. He's ghosted us. Like, we figured he was locked up with a doe out there. And he pulled the disappearing act. And this is about 3 miles from where we had seen him originally.
Wow.
So whatever. A couple days goes by. I'm up to bat. We're covering ground. I'm ready. I'm like, throw a 140-inch 8-pointer. We're not dedicating anything to this deer because it's just, even though we've seen him, it's like too risky to put all your eggs in that basket. Like, it's still a shot in the dark that we're going to catch him on public. Even though we did that on the end of day 6, just for a bit, it's still so much private with checkerboarded, just little dots of public, and it's high risk. So it's like 2 of us with tags, 140-inch buck. Well, we're going down these prairie roads, and I can't even remember if Chancey spotted this buck or I did first. But boom, there he is. He's locked up with a doe, several hundred yards, but there's a piece of public. He's several hundred yards from it. He's on private. Well, we read the situation. We keep the vehicle going because in that country, those deer, like if you stop, they're going for 2 miles. Like they ain't.
Yeah.
Not always, but a lot of times they would. And with him being so close to public already, it's like we just kept the vehicle going.
Yeah.
And I think when we went up the roadways, turned around, drove by, I think Chancey got glass on him while the vehicle's in motion. He's like, yeah, it's him. And it's like, we both felt it. Like, he's probably going to end up on that public, just the read of the land and everything. And so at that point, it's like, yeah, we'll go all in for the rest of the day if we got on the chance that they'll end up kind of following this little, like, drainage ditch or something. I mean, it wasn't much. It was like in them flat fields. It's like a little spot where they don't plant any crop that's 20 feet wide or whatever. And so that kind of led into the public. And there was only about another 100 yards of public. It was right on the corner of the public. We were about 100 yards up from 20 yards off the line, and then about 100 yards from the other line. So we weren't very far on. There was this we get in there. We had to take here again out there, it's like we drove the half mile past the public. Like it was a half mile by half mile piece of public. We drove, they're about a half mile from public. We drove all the way for the mile to the edge of that public, then walked that in, and then we could see him out there about a mile. We got a half a mile of public this way. We creep our way in there. And I mean, even though there was a lot of distance, it's like out there they got eyes. They pick you off pretty easy. So we were being extra careful. Get in there. There's this old round bale. It had been out there for years, it looked like, but that was about the only thing we could come up with for cover where we could intercept this buck. Is we'll just try to hide. We fluffed up this old round bale. There wasn't much left of it. It was probably only, I don't know, 2.5 feet tall left of what was left of it or so. And we fluffed it up and kind of made a little sort of a ground blind, which isn't normally what our style or whatever. But in this case, there wasn't much else to do. And we just sat there and we had eyes on him. And I think from the time we spotted him in the morning till the time they finally crossed the line was 7.5 or 8 hours or something like that. Finally, doe's coming across the line. There's this ditch. She crosses, and he's being smart. He's hanging back. He hangs back there on the private, and he's not far away. He's only like 20, 25 yards from us, but he's on the private, and he hangs back and lets her go off ahead of him. I don't know if it was 30, 40 yards. And then finally at the last second, he decides, okay, it's safe. And he crosses and drops into the ditch. Well, when he was dropped into that ditch, it was not very deep on the private where he was, but right when it went into the public, it was like he disappeared. It was deep enough. It wasn't a smart move for him to drop into that ditch. Like, I don't know what he was doing, but he dropped in there. And when he dropped in there, the doe pegged me or pegged us or whatever. Knew something was up. And because she's got full visual of us. I mean, we made what we could work with it, but we're still sitting out there from that side, pretty like exposed. By the time, so he pops his head up out of this ditch and recognizes, what's up? My doe is looking at something over there, and he doesn't know whether it's a threat or what. And we just stayed calm. And all of a sudden, he read it wrong. He read her demeanor as there's an incoming buck, and he thought on the other side of that round bale, I can't see it. I got to get over there. And he kind of came in to cut that off. What he thought her demeanor was another satellite buck coming in, not a danger. At first, he was like, what is it, danger or, another buck? Well, that's the way he read it. And he V-lined kind of towards us to cut off what I believe he thought was another buck coming in. And he come by at like 13 or 15 yards or something like that. And all of a sudden he's like, and he takes off trot. He's trotting when I take that initial shot. And I didn't make a good shot. My arrow hit him right in the front kneecap, So not a very deadly shot. Like I said, he was on the trot, but I overthought it. I was drawn back, and at the last second, my head got it. I'm not leading him enough. And I pulled the shot, and then I caught it in the video. I dropped my bow arm at the same time I pulled the shot. So that's how I didn't understand why I hit low, but I knew why I knew why I hit front is because I overthought it. So anyways, doesn't matter. I hit him in the kneecap. Within a couple of gallops, I can see it broke his leg. So he gets out. I snatch another arrow. He's out there about 60 trotting, and I just send it. And it was close. It was close to connecting while he's trotting. You know, at that point, he's got a broken leg. It's like,
Yeah, you can't wound a wounded deer.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But anyways, my arrow didn't connect, and now he's still trying to hang with this doe and follow her. She's running off across the prairie. They're off of public now, and we got to get out to the vehicle. You know, obviously on that hit like that, it's like, well, we're going to have no blood. Like immediately it's like, oh my God, I just messed up the biggest, screw up of all time, because for a number of reasons, it's like, well, I'm not going to have any blood. It's not a lethal hit. All the acreage that the deer is on and or heading towards is acreage that 2 years prior, when we hit a different big buck, we had Shay had hit one in the guts on this piece of public, and the deer got this land, and that guy did not like us. Any hunters in the area. So at that time, and we had to get the game warden involved. And even with the game warden involved, we weren't allowed to go on that land to get that deer. So I'm like, there is no chance in hell where this deer is heading. Like, it's over, is what I'm thinking. And we're both thinking it. Like, there's nothing we can hardly do. I mean, we got to get out there and try to get a visual on him and try our best, right? But it's not looking good. So we rush out to the van, drive around. This is another big section. I think that one was 3 miles by 1 mile, something like that. We drive around the section, and we're way far behind this deer now. Wherever the deer ended up, we're probably not getting our visual on, but we got a pretty good idea where he is heading. And I think we got the minivan stuck because it was out on them roads. It had rained, I think, the day before or something like that. And I think we got the minivan stuck, and Chancey and I were pushing it along while we're trying to get down this mud road. And we think we know where this big buck went, which is in this little wood lot. And we see this farmer pull in there. Not the one, different farm from the one I just was talking about. And we can tell he's acting like, what's up with these guys? Like, we're out there in this minivan, like stuck or whatever it appears. And well, we get the van free, and we're coming up the road towards that woodlot. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that big buck is probably in that little woodlot. And he's pulling in there. We can't get out the other side to see where the big buck goes after he flushes it. It's just another circus, And as we're pulling up closer to the woodlot, the truck comes pulling out, or the big buck comes running out in front of the truck, and then the truck comes out of there, and here's the big buck running down the road. And we got the video footage of that too, the big buck running down this lane, and yeah, he's big and his legs flopping, and now this farmer, sees what's going on there and stops and talks to us. Well, that ended up being a huge blessing. So, because he's seen the big buck, we explained the story. Okay, hit him over on this piece of public. He come running over here towards it. We're coming around, and well, he happened to know the other guy. So the buck ended up out of he was going in there to check on his cattle. And that big buck came out of there. But now he's seen the broken leg and everything. And now he got involved in the story just by default. And he's like, well, I know him over there, and I'll give him a call. So he called this guy, and well, another blessing happened to come forward out of my control, or out of our control. And the guy that actually owned that ground was out of town. So the guy that we had the issues with a couple years before that, but the guy who managed it was a relation of his, and he had the rights to run it or whatever. And he gave us permission to, and even involved himself in helping over the next couple of days trying to relocate the deer. So the buck went into this jungle thicket. I think they called that hellhole. Those private guys called it hellhole. It was a jungle thicket. And I can't remember if we went in there. I think we just staked it out that night. We staked it out because now we had permission. It took a little time of him thinking about it, but he gave us permission. Chancey staked out one side. There was only like an hour left of light. And I staked out the other side. We didn't want to get too aggressive going in there and bump it. Like, okay, if he feels like that security place, then we're going to leave him in there overnight. That's the way it went down. And, well, he didn't come out of there. So we're thinking in our heads, he's going to be in there the next day. We're going to get a bump on him and then get a visual on him and then plan a second stock or whatever. That's the plan, Well, next day comes. I go walking in there, looking everywhere, cannot find him, nothing. And covered it well enough to where it's like he ain't in there. And it's like, where would he have gone? Like, why didn't he stay there? I mean, it was a perfect security location. It just boggled up in my mind, and Chancey's too. And, well, started covering a lot of area, miles upon miles of acreage in the area that, a lot of it was the one farmer, another farmer, and then there was another farmer, rancher that he got looped into the whole deal, and he gave us permission to check his ground. And, it's looking pretty dead-endy. And it got to day 3, and it was like, you're giving up. You're not giving up, but you're giving up. And it got to the point where I was walking a piece that was 3 or 3.5 miles from where I last seen the deer, which was about 5 miles from where I put the initial shot on. And it was a piece of walk-in, actually. I was like, well, there's some cover here. Maybe he went here. We have no idea about this deer, like where he'd call home or anything. We got no prior knowledge of the deer, so we don't know where home would even be. But it's like I'm walking into that piece to check at this piece of public. I find another buck, a 150 incher in a ditch in there, and I'm not interested, but I'm like, I could freaking go up there and kill that thing. And I come back to the van. And I tell Chance, I'm like, yeah, he's not in there. And I'm like, there's 150 incher down. And he's like, you got to go. You got to give up. He's like, it's day 3. It's not happening. And he wants me to get the deer in the worst way possible. It's like he's trying to think of everything. But it's like, we've all been there. It's like at some point you reach a point where it's like, you got to give up. You got to let go. You got to move on. You lost that one.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, let's go try to, I guess, we've searched all that other ground. There's nothing else really that I can think of to search. So we went in there to try to kill that 150 incher, and I got in there to steps away from him. I think it was 6 or 7 steps or something like that.
Wow. It
didn't come together. And, so I almost killed that deer. I didn't want to. It's like I've hit this big buck. I don't think we're going to get him, but So anyways, that didn't come together, and I continue on the battle of trying to find him after that. And you're kind of in that. I think we made the decision the last hour we would focus on trying to find a new buck for Chancey or myself, because Chancey hadn't killed one yet either. Or maybe he just did. He did kill one somewhere in there. Maybe by that point he had killed it. He killed one while I was trying to find this one. A couple other buddies came in and Shay filmed him kill one while I was looking for this buck. So I think that had happened. So it was just me left, but like cutting your loss, you know how it is. You're half in, half out. Like you still want to find your buck that you hit, but it's like you're not giving up, but you're kind of giving up, but you're not there yet. And that's where I was at. And then the next morning, just went into a gas station and ran into this guy. And I'm always trying to keep a low key. I don't want anybody to know who I am, what I'm doing, filming. These guys, these local guys, they picked up on it that I'm filming. I didn't tell them who I am or what I'm filming for or that. Even the locals that helped, they didn't inquire much, so I didn't say. But so I'm keeping a low key as much as I can. Well, this younger guy, not much younger than me, he walks in the gas station. Well, he strikes up a conversation with us. Well, somehow he learned about the one that Chancey shot and struck up a conversation about it. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, how does he know? Because we're pretty dang low key.
So you thought.
So I thought. Well, somewhere in there, he learned that he knew about the one that I hit or something like that. Or he asked,
wow.
And I put it together later on. He was on the phone. I picked it up, and when I was editing the production, he was on the phone with the landowner where the buck ran out in front of the truck.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I picked up on it when I was editing. I was like, he was on the phone with him, with the guy. So he already knew, the guy in the gas station that run into us, he already knew that I had hit one and knew about it. And so in that moment, since he already knew about the one that Chancey got, I kind of was like, I just openly shared with him. I was like, I hit a big one a few days ago, and we were trying to figure out, I just said, we were trying to figure out where this buck maybe called home. And I thought, well, maybe he'd know. And I didn't want to pin him down, and, it's a hunter thing. You don't want to pin a guy down. But I was kind of like, maybe he'll openly share with me where this, and I brought up an aerial, and I said, I showed him on the aerial. I said, I've been kind of thinking maybe he called this home. Well, he told me that the deer lived right out there where you shot it. Well, that didn't quite fully add up with, there was something off there that I felt, it just something just didn't feel quite accurate there. And so I went about my morning. I didn't think too much of it. Nice guy. He said, I've got pictures. I've got a few pictures of the deer I'll send over to you. And, well, we went about our day, and where I had identified as a possible, it was the last spot I could possibly think of that we hadn't checked. It was a long ways. It was about 3 miles from where we had last seen them, 3 or 3.5 miles from where we had last seen the deer. But it was private signs, purple painted posts too on top of it. We could see box blinds and tree stands from the road. There's not a chance this guy's going to let us go look for a deer that's non-fatally hit, is what I kind of felt. And with it being so far from where we last seen the deer, I just hadn't, that was the one pocket that was just in the back of my head. It's like, could he have possibly looped back? Like, it made no sense really, but that would mean that from the time I hit that deer, if he ended up back there, he'd have had to go 7-8 miles, without us pressuring him. I mean, other than the initial shot and the guy driving out of that woodlot with his vehicle, he never got bumped by us. So, I mean, I just felt like that was a long ways, but it was like the last little spot that was in the back of my head. Well, we get the day rolling, and it's like we're kind of, again, we're moving on, but we're not fully moving on. Mm-hmm. So the first hour of the day, it's like, okay, scope out possible new options for a buck. Maybe we'll spend the majority of the middle of the day maybe still searching for this deer. So we pegged this buck right out of the gate, right after the gas station on public. We called him Droopy. Chance, it's the same buck that we should have killed day 5 and 6 with Chancey. He's a big part of the feature story too. And out there on this piece of public, locked up with a doe. And we go out there. It's a piece of walk-in. And we go out there, make a play on him. And about the time we're getting into range. I think I'm getting him close to around 30 yards, I want to say, or something like that from the deer. 3 or 4 horses. This is walk-in land, so people can still have their cattle or horses or whatever on it. 3 or 4 horses come walking in there and bust that buck out of there. And it's like, can anything possibly go right for me? And we get back to the vehicle, and this fella, and this guy, we got to be friends. He would prefer that I keep his name probably quiet.
Sure.
He's a big buck killer. Anyways, he sends me the pictures that he had in the summer. Well, I look at the photos and I'm like, well, that ain't out. I don't know where that's at, but that ain't out. That deer didn't live out there. I mean, that ain't out where I hit him. I can tell that much. I can't tell anything else, but I'm like, So we go driving back through that kind of area, drive by that piece again where I'm like, it's the last piece in the back of my head, the purple sign or the purple posted sign and all the posted signs and the whatever. And we're about 2 miles past it, kind of pretty much giving up. And I'm just like, I just got to go talk to the guy and just, he's going to tell me no, but it's going to bug me. It's going to haunt me forever if I don't go knock on that door and wonder, at least I tried, and I don't know, this is 3.5 miles from where I last seen the deer. It's on a whim, it's day 4 now. I pull in there, guy comes to the door, and I explained to him exactly what happened. I said, hey, I hit this buck 3-4 days ago. You might have heard about it. I don't think he had, but I said, it's not a fatal hit. I hit him in the knee. He's got a broken leg, and I've searched high and low everywhere, and I don't know, but I feel like he might be in your creek bottom down there, and I don't have any blood, obviously. And nicest guy, go ahead, search all my ground, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, I read that completely wrong, with the posted signs and the purple paint, this box, the tower stands and stuff. I was like,
and like willing to let you kill it there as well, if need be.
Yeah. And he was just nicest guy, and just, I hope you get him. And he's like, if you do, please bring him back and show us or whatever. And so I've got, and I pointed out to him where I thought potentially the buck maybe would be in his creek bottom. And he said, well, you might want to check here too. And that was the next quarter parcel, even further away from where I had last seen the deer. And he said, you might want to check here too. Well, so I wasn't even considering that. Well, Chancey drops me off on the road on the piece that the guy suggested I check, and I'm just going to walk the whole thing. Well, I get, 100 yards from the road, and I'm coming around this little cedar pine tree, and about 5 yards from me, boom, he jumps up. And it's like, is this real? Like, I've been searching miles, like walking miles and days of looking for this deer. And when he jumped up 5 yards from me with that big a rack, it's just like, it doesn't feel real, right? It's like, oh my God. And he runs out there to like 45, 50 yards, and it's like, no, it is real. It is real. It's happening. And I pull out, snatch arrows out of the quiver, and I'm just like, I got to get one in him. But I'm so like rattled. I sent 3. He stood there at like 45, 50 yards. And I'm like, as fast as I can, trying to, and I sent 3 arrows all around him. One over him, and I think it was either one in front of him or one under him. It was 3 different around him, though, and not a one touched him. But I'm like, I'm not sweating about it, because it's like, now we've got most of the day, and got a visual, and I think we're going to be able to maintain a visual. And with where this buck's headed, we got miles. You know, all those people, that's all land that we have access to for this deer. So I snatch up my arrows. Chancey's out on the road. And by this point, Chancey sees the buck. He's several hundred yards now running. He gets a clip of him. It's in the video. He's running. The buck, I don't know how far he's went. There's some more cedars ahead. I kind of weave my way through there, and, you know, I'm trying to not go so fast that I miss, and then he doubles back on me. You know, like I'm trying to search things. He disappeared on Chancey then in there, and all of a sudden it was like ghost. You know, like Chancey didn't have a beat on him. I didn't have a beat on him. There was enough terrain in there. And it's like, oh, my God, we lost him. We lost him. We're probably going to find him back. Let's not stress. But I went back. I ended up looping back up through there. Couldn't find him. And then I think I seen him way over on the horizon or something like that. Okay, he's in that. Now he headed towards the original parcel where the guys, he come running out in front of the guy's truck. So Chancey drops me off. We go all the way down to that section. Chancey drops me off. I go in there and get in this pinch point spot. And that buck ends up coming through trotting. And there was this really nice barbed wire fence. And I thought there was no way he was going to cross that with his broken leg. Like, no reason to. Like, I know which side of the fence he's on now. And I'm like, he's going to round right around here. I'm going to be a few yards from him, probably under 5 yards when he comes around this. And he's probably not going to cross this fence. Well, I was wrong again, right? I see him up there 150 or so yards ahead coming, and then I lose my visual because there's enough trees along there. But all of a sudden I heard just a little ting, and I'm like, he crossed the dang fence. And I'm like, oh, my God. There's no wind, and now I've got to get across this barbed wire fence, which it's one of them really nice, really tight ones that actually keep cattle in. It's like,
Yeah.
In this case, I had to go over it too, which he might see me doing that. I've lost my visual, but I know he's coming right up the other side. But I felt like he was going to stay far enough out I couldn't shoot. I felt like that's why I needed to get across that fence, is because I was like, I'm not going to be able to probably take the shot and make it unless I do that. Well, I got across the fence just in the nick of time to confirm, yep, he did cross. He's staying way out from me. Like, at first I was like, please come right up the pipe. It's going to be 5-10 yards if you do. No, he's staying out there. And he's coming up through these cedars now. And all of a sudden, I'm repositioning in these like horse weeds. There's no wind. He hears me repositioning. There's just, even though he's trotting, he hears me, freezes. And I'm like, shit, he's 35, 40 yards. The only shot I've got is when he breaks. Like, he doesn't know, he can't see me like through the thicket. He heard something, he knows something's up. He's going to take off trot, whether he doesn't see me, but he's going to take off trot. And when he does, my only gap was about a deer length wide, about 3 deer lengths in front of him. So as soon as he took off, I was going to have to draw that bow and send that arrow as fast as I could. And that was going to be my only opportunity.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, that's the one shot. I didn't get the camera. I had a little camera with me. I just couldn't get it turned in time and get across that. I was like, I had to ditch it, the idea. But I wish I would have had that shot on video.
Yeah.
Because you see, what is on video is him trotting up the way, kind of like I described. And then but when he froze and I'm like down in the weeds and he hears me and then he takes off running and I just sent it. And as I send that arrow and I see the arrow heading there, but everything happens. It feels like it's almost like slow motion because every neuron in your brain is just absorbing into that moment. As soon as I send that arrow, I'm like, well, it would have been good if it got there quick enough. And I like down my other arrows is what I remember. And as I, just glanced down, reach it, look back, and the arrow connected with his hindquarters just in the nick of time. Like he was almost through it, and it connected with his hind. And I was like, huh? Because I thought in my head it wasn't getting there fast enough. And now at that point, I'm like, we're getting him. We're getting him now. like I knew, at that point.
Oh, I'm sweating over here, Jared.
Yeah, I was like, even if I didn't hit an artery or anything, we're getting him. I knew that much at that point. So it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it's like snatch the arrows and run around the other side. He's going into this cedar thicket, that's maybe an acre and a half or something. And I'm projecting if it's not vital, lethal, he's going to fly right through it. So I get around the other side in case he does, but he didn't. I kind of started creeping back, and then I could see him in there, and he was dead within a minute or minute and a half or something. It hit him in the arteries. But anyways, So then Chansey, who's very much involved in the chaos, he shows up, and it's just like, holy smokes, and we walked up to. We knew he was big, but he didn't have a big body. I think if we never put him on a scale, I would be surprised if that deer was, I'd say maybe 180 pounds field dressed. He just did not have a big body. And that's, I think, a lot of times those bucks in Kansas, they'll be all beat up and mangled. A lot of times the racks. Well, that was November 19th when I hit him. When I put the initial shot on him, he doesn't have a broken anything on him. And I think it's because he didn't fight. He just wasn't a fighter because he wasn't very big. He didn't have a big body. A lot of the deer in that area have a big body. And I think from early on at a young age, he just got his butt kicked so much. He just stayed away from fighting because I don't think he would have weighed more than 180 pounds field dress. So I guess where I'm going with this is when we walked up to him, we were kind of expecting some ground shrinkage. Like we knew he was big. We were expecting some reduction. And it's like we walked up to him and it's like, oh my God, he's bigger than we thought. It was kind of like like small body. He should be going the other direction. And once we had hands on him, it's like, that's when, we realized like just how unique and special that deer was on the rack side, let alone the story and the chaos of everything.
Yeah.
With all the, the circumstances of everything. I mean, it was just like, and it might have sounded like a lot of details, and there's a lot I skipped over too in there. It's about an hour long, I think, feature in our video series of that. I think that North American Whitetail ended up putting it in their magazine.
Right.
Back at that time, Gordon Whittington told me that was the longest story they ever featured in.
It's the longest story we've had on this podcast too.
It just had so many ups and downs and twists and turns.
Yeah, absolutely.
And different things, and then on top of it, it's the caliber of deer of what it is.
Right.
I didn't ever look it up, but Gordon at that time, and this is maybe not the case anymore. At that time, he told me that was the largest typical he ever knew that was shot with a longbow, too. So it was like this convergence of, I thought about it and I was like, man, I'm so glad I didn't double lung that, double lung. It made for such an amazing, cool story between the dynamic of all the landowners. And it's like, I think that's the way it was supposed to, divine intervention, God, whatever you call it. That's, for me, that's, I call it God. I think that's the way it was supposed to go down. I wasn't supposed to double lung that deer. I was supposed to go through all the fiascos and everything. I think, I felt that while it was happening too. So there was a bit of spiritual side of it.
Sure.
Like it felt like I'm going to make this happen, but you're going to know it's not just you kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like a couple.
It's admirable. I mean, it's just that's really something, the persistence you had to get that deer.
Well, I think that's what kept me going.
I've had persistence like that, but never if I didn't have a track or blood or something. You just assume you've lost it, you know?
Yeah.
That's admirable. And, you know, it gives a guy hope too. Your story's a good one, because anybody listening to this, you know, next time they want to give up, they're going to think, well, remember that one Jared got? You know, he never gave up, you know, me included, because I've given up on bucks, and you wonder, you know, like I think a thing that's gotten me is, you know, the giant goes across the land border and you just assume that somebody ain't going to give you permission. And you went over and asked, and I didn't. And, you know, on one or two that I've hit, you know, and yeah, very cool.
You know, it took me till day 4, you know, now we didn't even think there was a chance on day 2 that deer was maybe over there. So it didn't even register, but it still took I felt so stupid once the guy was so nice and open about it. It was like I felt so stupid for not asking the day before, because I think it was day 3 that spot started really filtering in my head, like, did he maybe do a figure 8 double back? And
the one thing that a lot of people probably aren't getting in that the whole story is that Kansas is a different animal. Where you're hunting down there, I'm assuming, is real open country and small woodlots. It's easier to pick it out, but when they're covering miles, it's not like Wisconsin or
right.
You know, it's there's certain woodlots and you can kind of like knock out those woodlots. Am I correct there?
Yep. You're very correct, and that's in that particular case. That's also, with it being such a non-fatal hit, that also helped keep my spirits up. With, like, I mean, Chancey and I were both on the same page right away. Like, day 2 came, that morning broke, and it's like, we just need to get him on his feet and get a visual and keep maintaining that visual, and we'll get him, you know. And that was kind of our plan. Just keep covering ground and keep walking ditches, and, you know, if we get him on his feet, get our visual. Whereas, you know, like what you're talking about, in a lot of terrain situations, you know, like a lot of the woods or swamps or what, you don't have that, you know, without blood, it's very difficult to. So that was another blessing that ended up that is the way it worked. Because when I did jump him on day 4, he went almost 2 miles before I ended up getting that arrow in him, from the time I jumped him at 5 yards on that cedar, because I was only 100 yards off that road. And by the time I shot him, he was all the way through that section and almost through the next section. He was about 100 yards from the road on the next section. So he had went through almost 2 full sections, you know, in a matter of a couple hours, you know.
Wow. Great story. And you had everybody, I mean, those that haven't seen it, you had everybody on the edge of their seat here, according to the comments.
Oh, let me also say one other thing. On the initial knee shot, Chancey, who was filming, he captured the most incredible shot capture we had ever documented on our end. It's like the buck came by just like you'd want him, like if you're a filming, like it's right over the shoulder. So it's like, you know, it's like all these different things on top of the crazy story. And I mean, I'm glad he was there for morals. Because, I mean, he kept my spirits alive, and he kept my, you know, that helped a lot too. You know, a lot of times somebody hits a big buck, you know, I don't want to say they're alone necessarily, but I had a guy there with me that's very positive spirit driving me for 4 days. You know, I mean, we might on day 3 started getting to the point where it's like, probably got to cut our losses, but he was very much involved in trying to maintain positive spirit of let's try to find him and get him. And so that helped a lot. So
you got to hunt with positive Pete's and not negative Nancy's, because a negative Nancy would have brought you down to the point and driven you away from that hunt. You know.
Yep. Could have ruined your spirit and to the point where you just gave up. Right.
Yeah.
A true story of resilience.
Yep. What's that?
Which DVD is that on?
That's Defiance 1.
Defiance.
I ended up with that one. It's a shortened version. There is a version on YouTube. It's a much shorter version of all the detail, of the full story. But it's Defiance 1. So that was 2015. Yeah. So
Awesome. All right.
Can I step away for a restroom break for one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go right ahead. Now that we're an hour and a half into it here.
Is that how far?
We are an hour and a half in. Yep. $2 to go.
Yeah. So I hit a buck in the ass like that, like his fatal shot.
Mm-hmm.
One time, that buck came in and I ended up shooting straight down. It didn't come down the trail. I thought it was going to come, and it came straight at me. And I tried shooting straight down at point blank from just like a few feet over the top of its back. And looking through the sight pins, I didn't realize a limb got right in front of my broadhead. And when I released, the arrow smacked this limb in front of the broadhead and went tumbling through the air, and it actually ended up hitting a deer in the ass, like 2 inches in front of the tail, and penetrating about an inch or two. And blood almost hit me in the tree stand. It just came out like a geyser. And
Hit that femoral artery.
Yeah, the buck took 2 bounds, looked around, and just fell over. It was the fastest kill I ever had. And I got 2 inches of penetration, and I hit a limb and had my arrow hit it almost sideways and only going 2 inches.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah. You hear stories. I think we talked about this even on the last show or whatever. I had mentioned, if there's a thought that you hit that artery, now for it to bleed out that quick, you'll talk to a lot of guys that do tracking with the dogs and stuff. They say the best thing you can do is start pushing that deer right away. Get that blood pumping to get that. Just.
I said that years ago. Everybody used to get mad and laugh at me and say, "No, you always wait and stuff." But if you got a flesh wound, pushing them is the best thing you can do because it keeps them bleeding.
Right.
I've actually had hits kind of like his original hit. I had a 9-pointer. I shot in the leg just above the knee with a broadhead and broke the leg. And it was bleeding where he said his wasn't bleeding, but mine had vessel blood, probably like arterial blood, but that low in the leg, they don't have much for arteries, right? So it was bleeding. And I ran after that deer and kept pushing it for a couple hours until it just ran out of blood and fell over. And if you didn't do that and it laid down and put that leg into the mud, it would have just healed up.
Right. Or would have stopped the bleeding. You would have put the compression of laying down and packing it in mud. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it could have healed over for sure. All right, cool. Jared, welcome back. Are you ready to move on to buck number 4 here?
Yeah. I'm trying to make these ones shorter, but that one was good. I knew that.
No, it's a phenomenal story.
It's like, yeah. I mean, people just go watch that YouTube version or get the full one and
just get the DVD, right?
Yeah.
Go buy the DVD.
Get the DVDs. Yeah.
How many people out there do you think still are hanging on to DVD players just for you?
I tell you what, we got the Micro Adrenaline machine on our website. You can purchase it. It plays all of our content.
That's right.
I shipped one yesterday. So
that's awesome.
It's surprised me. It has surprised me how many people actually still buy the DVDs and want the DVDs.
It's amazing. I mean, the DVDs that I made back in the early 2000s are still selling. Just keep going out the door.
Yeah, it blows. I was talking to Guy Fitzgerald recently, and he said the same thing. So it's it blows my mind. I mean, especially with all the content out there.
Right.
Free content, free hunting content, or free content. It surprises me. That's what I'll say.
We put all of our DVDs on the paid channel, so people that are on the members channel that they pay to be on.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Guys that didn't have DVD players, and it's cheaper. It's $5 a month to join there.
Sure.
So that kind of slowed down my DVD sales, but
Yeah.
some people happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting to the point where it's kind of like that retro thing that's like cool. They're on the bookshelf, and it is the last physical, real kind of video
Yeah.
content. So it'll stick around for much longer than I projected it, in my opinion, now at this point. So
one of my all-time favorites is the Reckoning, for sure.
the Reckoning.
And the gun hunting and the Reckoning too, there, the second DVD in that.
Okay.
I mean, like there's some lines in there
Yeah. Well,
that get repeated
Yeah.
every year during deer camp over and over again. So some of the stuff with the van and it just absolutely cracks me up to this day. So.
Yeah, that was a special season. And I'm not going to say what the title for the new one's going to be, but Reckoning 2 was on the docket because it's a really good season. But I'm not going to say what it's going to be. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, the old Raper van.
Yeah.
That's like the one that all the time you see a van like that, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. It was 1988 Econoline. On that series, we killed 7 bucks in 7 days.
Yeah, right.
In that, between Kansas and Nebraska, we filled up in Kansas. I think 3 or 4 of us had gun tags in Kansas. I've never gun hunted Kansas, but I'm always there for the film. Been there for the filming. Well, other than Kansas muzzleloader way back in the day, but I was like, it's green. I'm not filming a green gun hunt. It just didn't feel right to me. I didn't grow up like that. So Mike Yoder filmed that.
Sure.
But yeah, and then we went to Nebraska, dropped our standards, obviously, compared to Kansas, and yeah, we shot 7 in 7 days. So the Reckoning was a pretty cool season.
That was a really fun one to watch, and it's in heavy rotation at deer camp every year. All right. With that said, let's move on to buck number 4 here.
Okay. Yeah, that one. That is 2016, the year after the last one, and that one made the cut for a number of reasons. Shay and I were on that hunt. Shay killed a mega thick racked 8-pointer, I think on day 2. We didn't have much time. Shay wanted to get family tradition, Wisconsin gun season. And
right.
By the time we got to Kansas, we didn't have much time. We didn't have many days. I don't know. I think we had 4 or 5 days. I want to say 4 or 5 days, something like that. And that's it for both of us to try to kill good bucks. He killed one. I think it was day 2. This stud of an 8, and I think it was day either later that day or the following day. We were about 40-50 miles from where he killed his big 8, checking out some new stuff, and I spot this big buck, or Shay does. I shouldn't say I did, because I can't for surely remember if it was him or I initially spotted this big buck locked up with a doe on public, ready to go. And I think there was a couple of satellite bucks. We watched him for a little bit to read how aggressive he was, because we had that decoy that we sometimes use as an option. And it's like particular scenarios, it's like we're kind of reading it, what's going to be the best. If we feel like we got the time, we take a bit just to read the animal a little bit and how aggressive he is or not or whatnot. Well, whatever we came up with, we ended up making a play on the buck. And we got in there, and he was in pretty short grass. They were in pretty short grass. And so it was going to be really tricky to get in close. Like, so short that when they're bedded, they can almost see you still. Like, they could see over the grass. That, it's that tall, a foot tall or whatever. So we get in there. We get to, I think, about 80, 100 yards out from him. And I didn't generally like to do this, but we sometimes would if it was too hairy, is I left Shay back with the camera. Normally, most of the time, I'd like it with the hunter because things happen, and it's like if you're too far back, you miss it. Some of that. So, but in this case, it was like I think it's almost impossible for both of us to get in there. So Shay stayed hanging back with the camera filming. I slither in there on this buck. And I think I'm inside of 15 yards. It's in the video. I'm not very far from him. I'm somewhere in that 15-yard range from him. He's bedded. He doesn't have a clue I'm there. I've got the wind cutting just right to make it work. And I've got it in my mind. I can't even crouch. That's how short the grass is. I have to stay on my back or my belly completely. And so I'm like already processed it in my head. Okay, he's going to get on his feet at some point. I'll let him get on his feet and I'll stay flat to the ground. And then when he looks away, that's when I'll come up. No need to panic when he gets up. Well, I was on my belly for quite a while, and I began to get stiff. So I switched to my back. And all I had to do to see him, this is how short the grass was. It wasn't golf course grass short, but on my back, my feet are straight out towards the deer. And all I had to do was take my quiver and put it behind my head like a little tiny pillow, keeping my head about 4 inches off the ground. And I could see his rack as he's bedded. That's how short it was. So not so short you can't be flat to the ground, but short enough that it's like I can't be crouched on my knees and get away with this, So I'm sitting there waiting, and I think I was there about an hour, and I had just turned and gotten on my back in that position. I think maybe 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, somewhere in there. And he gets on his feet, and he is looking somewhat my direction, so I can't come up to make the shot. Well, he starts walking towards me. And I'm reading the deer, and I'm like, okay, he's got Shay pegged back there. And he's walking towards me. And as he's walking, I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I was on my belly right now. I can't shoot on my back. Like I'm not, that's not something at that time I hadn't practiced that into my regimen of shooting.
Have you since?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
But back then, I couldn't do it. So I'm sitting there helpless as this big buck is walking towards me on my back. And I set up a little tiny action camera. And there's a trailer video of Good, Bad, Ugly that's on YouTube that people can kind of get a visual for what I'm. But the buck walks up, and with that action camera, it looks like he's further away, of course, than what he actually is. He is 2.5 steps from me. And I'm on my back, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. Like, had I seen what was happening prior when he was maybe 15 or so yards out, I maybe could have, even though I haven't practiced it, or back then I maybe could have gotten my bow, hooked on my feet and then drawn the bow and shot like that. But now he's so tight, I can't move the bow down to my feet to even try that, so, and I know where the wind's blowing. I'm like, it's over. And he cuts my wind, at 2.5 steps. He's already tight enough that he don't even really need the wind at this point. But yeah, and then he blew out of there. I come up in a hurry, take a shot I probably shouldn't have taken as he's running. Miss, completely miss. Turn around immediately. Shay's fully standing, and I make I'm like, you're fully standing? I've already got it in my head that the buck pegged Shay. Well, as soon as I take that shot, I crank around because I'm like, who's the guilty party here? Right? and he's fully standing, and I'm like, you're fully standing. Well, it turns out he wasn't fully standing when the deer pegged him. He fully stood once the deer exploded. But in that moment, I'm a little bit like annoyed that he got pegged to begin with. But it's always tough when you're filming. You're always going to be more exposed than the hunter to get the shot, to get the footage captured, right?
Sure.
So, anyways, we had a little powwow there, and eventually, I think I kind of came to grips in the between him and I. We always, even though we wouldn't admit it to each other, we always would, I think, internally admit when we were, out of line or whatever. So we ended up, so I didn't get the buck. We drive up the road about a mile. There's another big 8-pointer, like 145-inch 8-pointer out. So we don't have much time. We go in there on that one. This one, we don't have time to read the deer's reaction. He's penned up with the doe. I decide we're going to use the decoy. We don't have a lot of time. We get in there. Buck comes in, right up the pipe. Beautiful footage. Shay's 15 yards behind me. It's captured beautifully. I take the shot, and you see in the video clip, if you watch, you hear a ting. My bow hits the decoy stake. Coming up, there's a stake that comes out the back. Well, my longbow limb, a lot of times my shots go down, the bow's horizontal with the ground. Well, it hit the decoy, the arrow goes to the right. I mean, the deer was inside of 10 steps, should have had him right up the pipe, and blew that too. Well, it's 2 days later. So I think that's day 5. So it's like Shay's last day. Back in that particular area, this buck is back out there on that piece with a doe again. I don't know if it's the same doe, but same buck. He's out there. Very tough scenario again. Very aggressive. We can see he's got 2 satellite bucks there. And this is going to take us some time in this particular case to move on him. And so, and keep in mind that particular season, I guess the season before, the camera we're filming is this giant dinosaur. It's over 20 pounds.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's a big, they got to the point where those big ones were 32 pounds. But back then, I think it was coming in around 25 pounds, I think is what that one was coming in at. But I mean, we're trying to capture this footage. We get crawled in there. It took, I don't know, a couple hours to get crawled in there. And we're inside of 30. We had to snake in there between a couple of satellite bucks. And we're inside of 25, 30 yards. And in playing this game with a longbow, it's like I want him inside of 20 for a lot of reasons. Mostly because I have a better chance of getting him. But he's pushing these satellite bucks, and it's like, those satellite bucks could come prancing, prancing in on us, and then they get funny, and it blows the whole operation. So it's like a fine, in that game, it's like one wrong mistake, and it's over. Well, somewhere in there, all of a sudden, and I think I know what happened, is he just got done running off a satellite buck, and he turns. He's about 30, 35 yards, as I remember, in the weeds. And I lost my visual for a bit, and then all of a sudden, it's like he's coming right at us, like right for us. And there ain't no satellite buck by us. And it's like, it's going down. And he gets, I think the shot happened at 7 yards. We're both crouched down. Shay's got that big dinosaur camera trying to capture it. Crouched down. I take the shot. He's 1/4 2, kind of head on, but 1/4 2 more. So I take the shot. He's about 7 yards, and he's charging right in on us. And I think what happened is we had these little action cameras on, and they're white.
Sure.
We didn't tape that. We didn't get that taped up. And I think that's sitting on top of that big dinosaur camera. I think he caught that little shine through the grass.
Sure.
And I think he thought there was another buck he had to run, is what I think happened there. And I think that's why he come charging in. I think he just got done running off that one satellite buck, and then I think he caught that shine, and he was like, "There's another one coming in on my lady," and he was charging in, and I take the shot, and I hit him 1/4 and I hit the main bone, I think. Well, whatever happened, it hit him more head on, right where you'd want, but then it turned, and so it didn't get much. I didn't realize this till later. Well, we see, with where I seen the arrow enter, I'm like, he's dead in 30 seconds. Like, that's super lethal hit. Well, he takes off running. I'm like in celebratory mode or whatever, celebrating it. And it's like he just keeps running hundreds and hundreds of yards. And I'm like,
keep still going.
Shay and I are like, huh? What is going on? Like, I mean, we seen the blood. It's like, he got to some tree line thing down there, and so it's like, well, let's give him some time. He probably got off the public though, because right where that tree line the little patch of trees started, that's new property right there that was off the public. So
okay.
So we give him a while and then follow the blood trail. We go in there, follow the blood trail. But I'm like, from hundreds of yards out, I'm glassing down in these trees, figuring he held up there. He probably got off the public and is probably held up down there. I haven't went and asked for permission on that ground yet, but let's just see where we're at. He might have I'm still like baffled. I'm like, he probably just ran in there and died, and I'm probably going to be able to see him from the public and, whatever, go talk to the guy or whatever. I'm just one thing at a time, so we go following the blood, and then as it's getting closer, it's like, well, he's definitely not on public anymore, because the last like 100 or so yards, it's basically like golf course now. It's like cattle pasture or something well, I pegged the buck, and he's like 5 yards off the public, and there ain't much time left, maybe 2 hours left in the day. So it's like, and he's alive. And he actually, with how he's bedded, he looks like he's pretty healthy. And I'm like, what is going on? So with 2 hours left, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to track down who owns this by the end of, and get in there and do anything. So I'm like, the best thing I can do is crawl up there close enough that if he gets back on the public, I can take the shot. If he doesn't, I'll crawl back out of there, and then we'll get permission and deal with it tomorrow. So that's what I do. I get up there. I'm probably 2 yards from the private line. He's just across the line, but he's about 15 yards probably out from me. And so I'm close enough. And I mean, it is golf course short grass, like that. I'm laying there, and I got to pee. And I'm like, holding it. And this buck repositions. And he repositions in a way where he's like looking right at me. I'm so flat and low to the ground, not moving, that I'm like, he hasn't seen me, but I can't do anything. I got to pee. And this goes on. And finally, I'm like left with a decision. Like, I can't move at all, or he's going to peg me. And I don't want to flush him out of here, because hopefully he stays held up there. If he doesn't cross, get on his feet and move over here before dark, hopefully he just holds up there overnight, and I can deal with him tomorrow after I get permission, hopefully. In Kansas at that time, if you had blood, you can cross the line with or without permission, without the weapon, legally. Mm-hmm. So I'm like playing all the scenarios, but I'm in this position where I got to pee. And I got to pee, like, I can't reposition to the side. I can't move, or I'm blowing the operation, And it hits me. I'm like, if I got to pee my pants to get there, totally worth it.
You got to do what you got to do.
So that's what I did. And I mean, it was like the longest pee of my life because I had held it so long. And I'm sitting there and I'm like laughing to myself and I'm just peeing all over myself while this big buck is like looking at me. Well, that all goes down. The buck does get on his feet naturally on his own. And I watch him and he starts walking like he's pretty healthy. And he jives the public right on around it. Like I'm about 100 yards I'm right off the public line on one side of the fence, but in front of me is the next line, the corner, which is about 100 yards or less. And he jives right on around it, never comes on public. And I'm like baffled. I'm just like, how is this deer even alive? And so whatever. Nightfall comes. We actually went and stayed at the fellow that I mentioned in the last story that we ran into on the gas station. We became friends, and we ended up staying at his house that night. And I think we stayed at his house that night. We either showed up there we did stay at his house that night. We stayed at his house that night. Normally we were staying in the motel, but that night we had already pulled out of the motel, I think. And so he opened up his house, crashed there, showed him the footage a little bit, and hopefully we find the deer, but this is baffling. And go out there the next day. I go talk to the landowner. He gives me permission to search his ground for him. So I go out there and hardly any blood at this point. And I got a couple drops or something somewhere in there, and it dissipated to the point where now we're just back to kind of the last story, covering ground. And we're partway through the day searching, and finally Shay and I, we don't have a lot of time. He's already late getting back for the Wisconsin gun hunt deal. So we split up trying to just get a visual, find either blood or bump him or whatever. We're several hundred yards apart. And I think I picked up blood. I don't think I picked him up by visual. I think I picked up blood. And then I think I got the visual. I don't know. It's in the video. It was somewhere in there, though. We got back on him in the grass and got Shay out there. And we sneaked back in there on him. And I get in there tight on him in these thick, tall weeds. And I want to say I'm only like 5 yards from him or something like that. It's in the video. And he ends up getting me or something like that and erupts. I don't think I hit him on that shot, but he was far enough along. I think we were over 24 hours in by that point. And there was a bit of a fiasco. It's in the video getting him, but we ended up getting him. And
wow.
So, yeah, I'll here again, I got talking about a lot of these. I didn't mean to make it so long, but ended up getting the buck, peeing my pants in the process. and then with the first whole scenario of having him at 2.5 yards, and then later that night almost killing that other 8 and hitting the decoy with the bow limb and everything. Yeah, that one made my list. Is a pretty cool hunt.
Well, you're dedicated like they talk about. I mean, to piss your pants.
I came back. It's actually in the video. I came back and I was like, Shay was far enough behind me with the camera. I knew he didn't know what was going on. He couldn't hear me. So I came back and I was like all excited to tell him. It's in the video. I said, "You'll never believe what happened." I was like, I pissed my pants. And he loved that moment of capturing that.
You should have named the video Dances with Wolves. You ever see that at the beginning where the captain who loses his mind stands up and pisses himself and goes, "I just pissed my pants and there's nothing you can do about it."
I got to rewatch. When I was a little kid when that came out, and I watched it back then. I loved Dance with the Wolves, but I don't remember that, but I'll have to rewatch that. Yeah.
So that's you to that buck.
Right. Well, it was worth it. It was worth it, but
That is awesome. All right. Well, we're going to just keep it moving here because we are 10 seconds away from the 2 hour mark and we have another buck to talk about. So,
All right.
and this is a velvet mule deer.
Yes. Yes.
And you're standing proudly there with your longbow again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get to take a picture and get it half skinned, and then decide you needed a picture.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't
I
know.
was surprised when I got this picture. I was like, you didn't have a better picture. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with this one, but
Yeah, I don't know why I really just liked that photo.
it's a good photo. I mean, it gives good. I mean, how big that deer is.
That was one thing that we were very surprised was how big a body that particular mule deer was. And
yeah,
I think that's probably one of the reasons I like that photo. So, but
Dan's just now become demonetized, but that's okay.
oh, will that do it?
No, I don't
No,
know.
I won't do it. There's not enough blood in there.
Gotcha.
He's the big buck serial killer. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that one made the cut. That'll actually be in the next season release coming out.
Awesome.
The reason that one made my cut is because that's probably the most flawless stock that I've ever had, where I felt just super on point. Usually, even on ones I've been successful on, it's like I screwed up here, I did get away with it, but that could have cost me. And that one, it was like, wow, I wish I was that precise every time and everything that went just right, so how that kind of came to be, I didn't have a lot of time to hunt that year. I had this tag. Tanner, Jeremy Funk, and Ethan, who was filming, they were already out there on this hunt, but I was working on uncuffed some, and I just didn't have a lot of time for this hunt. So I figured I had like five days. I think I slotted for this. And so I showed up out there, and I kind of showed up, and I had this. There's a lot of hunts I've went on where I've ate the tag, and I'm fine eating the tag. But for some reason, I had this spooky, like, I'm going to get one. And I didn't actually think I was going to get a mule deer. I had an option, my tag was good for both. So, but this is the way it went down. So get out there. They had seen a big mule deer prior to my getting there. And it happened to be in this same vicinity, though it was a different mule deer. So we get out there. A couple days goes by. I'm just screwballing. Like, I'm kind of clowning, really. When you watch the video too, it's like, I'm like just having a good time with the guys, not too worried about trying to fill my tag, I guess you'd say. And we end up, Tanner and I, we spot this big buck just before dark, and he's over a mile. It's probably a mile and a half out. Got this visual of this deer, and didn't know exactly where he was, but he had to be bedded probably pretty close, we figured, to there. So Ethan's at that time filming Funky. Caught this buck right before dark. Not enough time to do anything with it. I mean, we're talking 15 minutes of light or something left.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing to do, but it's like early season. So, okay, well, hopefully he's back there tomorrow. At least we kind of got a little bit of a bead on where we're a big one. And we thought it was the one that they had prior seen. And which, as it turns out, was actually a little bit bigger. But we come back there the next morning to our this particular spot we were sitting at. We could glass a long ways. Pretty terrainy stuff. A lot of hills and ditches and stuff. There's a lot you can't see, but from this particular spot, we can glass a lot of stuff. So I think it was an hour and a half into the day, and it's like, damn, no visual of him or anything else to go after. And then all of a sudden, just for a few seconds, I picked him up on that same ridge. And we got a tiny little clip of him. You can barely see because, like I said, it's like a mile and a half approximately out. And he disappeared going over the other side. Well, you can't see the other side from anywhere. I have no idea what it looks like on the other side of that. And so we kind of formulate a game plan a little bit. I look at the winds, and I'm like, well, they're going to pick up, or Jeremy actually looked at the winds. They were going to pick up to around 20 miles an hour. A lot of times when we get visual on one, it's like, okay, what do we got for winds, direction, speeds, things like that. It's like, okay, it's going to pick up to around 20 mile an hour here later today. Okay. All right. So it was like, well, we'll come back. You couldn't, there was no spot I could get to even see what the other side looked like, really. So there was no point in even, it was like, I'm going to be going in there completely blind. He could be a mile on the other side of that ridge, or he could be, I figured he'd probably be within 100 yards of over top of that ridge somewhere is what I figured, but you don't know. So we go back to, we were camping, and we go back and we're screwing off. I'm like shooting arrows with the longbow. We're like geeking out like kids, just having stuff you don't probably like normally when you get a visual on a big buck, even though you lost it. It's like you normally don't leave, or you might reposition, but like I said, we couldn't really reposition to see the other side. But it's like the winds are picking up. He could relocate, and so you don't normally do that, but we did. And it gets into the afternoon. I think it was around 7 hours. I can look sometime, but I think it was around 7 hours from when we got the visual before we went in on him. And we went in, it was a little over a mile in there. And I kind of, here again, I'm like, it hit me. I'm like, it was dumb to leave. He could have easily, with all these winds coming in, he could have easily repositioned to the side where we could see him. Well, that would make sense that he would do that. So now I'm like, okay, that was stupid. So that is, I guess, one mistake I made, right? Okay, stupid. Like, so now I got to be really careful and really glass that whole one side of the ridge where he could have repositioned to. And Jeremy tried to show me at camp. He pulled up the aerial to show me, and I just kind of like, I'll figure it out when I get in there. Like, I didn't even I just kind of like brushed it off, like didn't even look at it. Well, we get it. We get moving in there, and I'm glassing it pretty good from a long ways out to see, double check, make sure he didn't reposition to this side of the ridge. And I'm feeling more and more confident he didn't. I don't really understand why he didn't do that with the strong winds that came in yet. I don't understand that. And I kind of got an idea in my head where I think he maybe disappeared over where approximately the region, there was a tree popping up, a couple trees or something. And figured he maybe went kind of over in that. Well, Ethan is filming me. We get up there and are cresting the one side of this ridge. And it was kind of like it was a ridge, but then it got flat on top and then over the other side, maybe 100 yards out, then it dropped off again. And that's where he disappeared. We get up there, and this is in that video too. And all of a sudden I realize, I'm like, holy shit, there's a whole new like covey of a draw right there.
Okay. And had I looked at the aerial that Jeremy was showing me earlier, I probably would have seen that. But in that moment, I changed my plan. When we got to where we were at that point, I was going to go right straight up over the top and then come over by where these trees were and then try to pick him out. As the years have went by, I've gotten to where
a lot of times I will come in on the skyline in situations to get the visual, which is risky. It's riskier on getting caught by sight, but it's not riskier on smell.
So wait, when you say, yeah, can you explain that a little bit more in depth real quick? Like when you say when you're coming up on the skyline.
Yeah. I've gotten to where I'm very comfortable coming in on the skyline. I used to maybe use the terrain to hide my visual.
Sure.
But what I learned over the years is if I'm very careful coming up over the skyline and just pick it apart and then move ahead a little bit and then pick it apart and then move ahead a little bit and then pick it apart, I can not only see a lot more, but I can control the scent a lot more. Like if I use the terrain more so I'm not visually skylined, a lot of times I'm giving up wind currents and then I'm not able to visually. Now I'm talking about more open country stuff or drainage, like in this particular case, there's a lot of thickets and stuff up on top. It's fully skylined. It's flat, nothing up there. But I've found that works for me a lot better a lot of times overall. So that was going to be my plan. Well, once I read that other draw system I was like, he's probably in that one. He's probably not where I read it from a mile and a half out. He's probably in this other one. And if I'd cut over to where I originally planned, I'm going to get to a point and he's going to smell me if he's in this other one. So I kind of like, okay, now we're going to have to work this whole, it was like a ridge nipple, so I was like, we got to work this whole ridge nipple around, and I got to just, it's so easy to think where they're probably at and then get sloppy. And so I was like, we got to pick this apart all the way around the nipple, and we can do it pretty quick, but we got to do it right. We can, but I don't know where he's at. So we got to do this right with the wind that works. And I can't cheat it, like I was going to cheat it until I seen that ditch, and that could have cost me in another way if he was out on the nipple, because then he would have got me by sight. So I repositioned my strategy in that case. And then Ethan and we took the nipple around, working it, and I stayed more towards the top, a lot of times skylined, working all these crannies, and it's pretty trainy stuff. People will see that in the video. As I'm coming around the top, I am wearing that hat in that photo while I'm stalking, but the wind, it actually stays on my head better than a normal cap in the wind, but the wind was strong enough, it blew off my head. And I was about around the nipple to where I didn't need it to block the sun anymore from my eyes. So I ditched it. I threw some rocks in the hat. I don't need the stupid hat coming off me when I'm getting into the, or something stupid happened.
Especially when you're working around the nipple.
Yes. And I don't need something stupid costing me. So at that point, once it's like I threw some rocks in it, scrapped the hat, don't need it to block the sun anymore. We continue on. We're getting closer to this. It was a very deep ditch draw system. And we're getting closer, and I'm getting it pretty well picked apart to where I've got it mostly covered to where it's looking very much like he's not in there. To the point where in my younger days, I could have made an easy mistake right here. But it got to the point where it's like, there's about 5% of it that I can't see yet. And there was this one part where I could have gotten sloppy and peeked my head out too much, and I could have seen this little bit down here that I can't see and that, but I kind of, in that moment, kind of backed up because I was like, that gets risky when you're like getting to a point where it's like, I'm moving ahead, but I can't look here and here at the same time.
Yeah.
So if I move too far ahead, it was just really a risky situation. And so I backed out and got way up on the skyline where I could then work that final tiny little pocket here that I couldn't see. And I did that. Okay, he's not there. This tiny little pocket he could be in. And I'm talking tiny, tiny that I can't see. Like one of them deals where it's like I said, a lot of time, a younger me would have blew right past it. Well,
Sure.
come back down off the skyline, peek over, boom, there he is, 7 yards.
Wow.
And because it was very small that I couldn't see. So I immediately retreat back towards Ethan with the camera because I got to get it on film.
Yeah.
Wind's blowing in. Here's another mistake that I would have probably made in the younger days is I would have probably pulled Ethan down to me at 7 yards right away. But immediately I was like, I need to get back up to him because if that wind drops for just a bit, it was gusting in and out. It wasn't one of them constant winds. It was one of them throbbing winds that's like blowing 20 miles an hour and then nothing for a few seconds and then 20 mile an hour and then it wasn't one of them steady.
So you were getting, it was almost kind of circling back around.
Well, I'm saying the wind itself
was
just a constant blowing. So I was at a point when I seen him at 7 yards. Well, as soon as that wind dies down in a gust, that your scent can suck right down.
Oh, yeah. It pulls it right back. Yeah.
Right. So in a younger me maybe would have pulled Ethan down to me right away because I'm already at 7 yards. I couldn't take that shot at 7. I needed to get tighter on him in order to get the shot. But a younger me maybe would have done that. But in that moment, I flew back up to Ethan, which was up near the top, which wasn't far from me, but 10 yards or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, reset. Now I got the wind safely, even if it drops speed in those gusts, it's still safely staying away from him. And we kind of regrouped. And I was like, as soon as that wind picks back up, we're going to get down there as quick as we can and make this happen. And so it actually took us longer to get down in there than because we had the gusts. I'm like, okay, let's go. And we're only like 15, 20 yards from him right now. But I'm like, let's go. And I get back to 7 yards and then the wind drops down and I'm like, I can't move. We're so tight. Now he's going to hear us. If I move anything. And I'm getting to the point where I'm fully skyline for him. I just happen to have it just right that I could barely see one of his eyeballs. And sometimes he'd turn his head. I mean, all he would have had to do was look like towards me. And it's like, what are you doing? So I'm standing fully upright. And it took a few minutes to finagle from 7 yards to about 4.5 to get the camera exactly, to get the shot and everything. And there was a couple times where I said he smelt us, or I felt like he smelt. Like I think he did pick up a little tiny hint of something a couple of times in there, the way he kind of acted. He didn't get too alarmed, but it was just enough that, and maybe not. But anyways, he was at 4.5 yards, took the shot, and he ran to his death. And other than if he smelt a little something somewhere in there, otherwise he never knew we were there. So that was pretty cool story with it. And I looked back. We did all of that, and we did all that, walked all that way in there, picked that all apart, and found him in an hour and 20 some minutes. I looked on the time clocks of the footage because I knew it didn't take that. We did it pretty efficient time because I wanted, there's a fine line. You do like I needed to do it fast enough to do it right, or slow enough to do it right, but fast enough that I had enough time. Because a lot of times when I get the visual, it still takes me hours to get in there tight with a longbow a lot of times. And so,
sure.
And so it's like I'm trying to do it right, but not too like in that particular case. So I did all that, but I was like really trying to do it as efficient as I could, planning once I get my visual, it's going to take 3-4 hours to get snuck in there. I didn't expect to find him at 7 yards. Like, oh,
Yeah.
he's right there. You know, like
What-
I wasn't expecting that. So
What do you feel like is your like effective range or your most comfortable range with the longbow? Like, where do you want them at?
I want him as close as possible.
Sure, but like,
I say inside of 20. I really like inside of 15.
okay,
I really like inside of 15. The
which
longest
is crazy. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, for most bow hunters, for most guys watching this right now, like, I get it because I'm the same way. Even with turkey hunting too, because I want good footage. I want to see all that kind of stuff. 15 yards is like I could spit that far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's close. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't spit that far, but like 15 yards is really, really close.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're on top of them.
I love it's super intense getting that close. For a long time it was it's not as intense in a different way for me anymore. The one I killed the following season was like 5 yards. And that's a pretty cool one too. But I love getting as tight as I can. But I've gotten the last few years, I've gotten some tricks in my arsenal, and I really felt it on that hunt too, that I just talked about. It was the first time I've ever gotten in that tight on one, and I didn't have that intensity that I just talked about. It's always been, and the reason for it is because I got fast enough I got in that tight, and I got to the point where I didn't, even if he smelt me or saw me, as long as I stayed on point, I got fast enough drawing and executing the shot with the longbow to where it doesn't concern me anymore over the last few years. And that, I recognize that I wasn't expecting that, but on that hunt with that deer I just talked about, it made it really cool because I could take risks that I wouldn't have taken before in like getting Ethan right where I wanted him for film. And, to get the shot, like you got him on, and it's like, it's kind of edgy when we're getting up there. Cause it's like, well, you can hear me. I'm like, you got his body? No, I need to get a little closer. Okay. All right. And it's like, I'm very comfortable, and I didn't expect that. And I'm kind of like, man, I missed that intensity that I normally would get, but I had gotten to that point with the longbow to where, and shooting it to where that actually works in my favor now. A lot can go wrong inside of that, and very quick inside of that, and that was always a handicap for me, is not being able to draw and execute that shot as fast as I needed to.
Yeah.
That was in fact the one to follow. That is what I got close enough. My intention was to force him to get me and then do the shot. And that's because I learned some things over the years that burnt me. And that is when you get in, well, you guys know, even in the tree stand game, Dan will be able to confirm this. You get a big mature buck inside of 15 yards, 20 yards, even though you're stationary, it gets risky. Like that time, there's a nerve wracking that happens. Like they're going to get me something. They're going to pick up some little thing, that scent or something. They're going to, it gets risky. And it's like many times, I've always, with the longbow, I'm always trying to get inside of, like I said, around 20 if I can. Well, I've gotten burnt, which is on the videos many times. I've gotten burnt getting inside of 20 and then waiting for them to stand or waiting for them. And the reason that has failed for me so many times is because I'm getting inside of that 20, and then I've got to sit there and hang out with them inside of 20 for an hour or two or however. And most of the time the guy filming is right there with me too. And when you're in that tight, you know, all it takes is one little switch of the wind for just a second, and then because you're so tight, and then that current gets you or whatever. And I'm like, in my mind, I was like, how can I get fast enough with this longbow that now I can, once I break that threshold of inside, say 15 yards, I can just move in and make it happen in seconds. And whether they get me or not, I'm fast enough to do that. And I've gotten that way. And that's going to change. It's changed some things already. But that's what I did on the one that follows that. In that particular case with that mule deer, I was ready for him to get us at any moment, but he didn't actually get us. But yeah, that's
the story.
That one will be a pretty cool one for people to watch on you know,
Oh, for sure.
So
Dan, what's your effective range? Like, where do you feel comfortable at?
I like 15 yards.
Yeah.
Between 10 and 20, right in the middle is 15.
Mm-hmm.
You start getting over 20 and mistakes happen and things get in the way and stuff. You get under 15 and deer really get inept at it, picking you off, mature bucks especially. Like Jared was saying, you hang around them too long within that 20-yard window, and they're going to catch you. Whether they see something, whether they get a backdraft or whatever, they're just so in tune with what's going on around them. And I think the more pressured they are, like some areas, some states, some places, deer don't get mature unless they go through a lot of hell. Some places, it's really hard to keep a deer like that in range for a long time, and even harder on the ground. So kudos to Jared for being able to pull that off. I have a hard time pulling it off on the ground.
Hey, everybody that's watched the videos have seen how many of them fail. You know, like I've got 100% got way more failed stalks than ones I've killed on video. So,
yeah.
But that's the fun of it. Like it's always a different chess. It's always a different set of circumstances. And it's like Chancey calls it a science project, right? You get the visual on the big buck, and it doesn't matter whether you're stalking them or hunting them by tree stand. It's a science project of, okay, I've got my visual, or I know that the deer exists. From some people use trail cameras to get their visual or whatever. Once you know, it's like a science project of all the variables, and every situation is different. And it's like you can go back to some things in the Rolodex of past situations and whatnot, but that's what it is. It's a science project. He calls it a science project. You know, it's like a puppet science project. You know, you got different strategies for different cases and situations. And sometimes you might, we've used the decoy sometimes not. It's sometimes you're coming in on the skyline to get the visual. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. It's everyone's a different science project.
So, like for ground for me, the main reason I've had more problems is because I'm generally not spotting that deer first. When I do see a deer and I go after it, it's a lot easier than sitting in a spot waiting for a deer to come to me. And I say that because most of what I'm hunting is very thick swamp and stuff like that. By the time that deer gets on you, he's right on top of you. You know what I mean? And it just kind of, they catch you a little more in that situation. Where if you see them and you go to them, you're planning an approach, you're watching their actions as you go. I think that is a little bit easier than sitting back waiting for them in a swamp.
I agree. I mean, you're holding more cards when you get the visual, and then you're planning your route, right?
Yeah.
you get to work the wind, you get to versus because there's been a lot of times in the videos and stuff where we have went in on foot, but then did a stationary position waiting for the deer to come to us. We're not exclusive to just stalking, but there's been a lot of situations, and there are a lot of times exactly what you just said, Dan. Yeah, we're sitting there on the ground stationary, but it don't work. It don't come together as well a lot of times as once we get that visual and now we're making the approach. And I think because if I'm sitting there stationary already, I'm waiting for that deer to come, but I'm more dependent on what that deer does the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it doesn't work as well for us, in a lot of those situations as well as getting the visual and then making that approach because we're able to kind of. You're constrained sometimes. Sometimes you only got minutes to make it happen, or whatever. It's like, well, he's on the foot, he's moving, he's going to blow through this public in 10 minutes, and we got to make this. And we've had situations like that. Fast action, got to take high risks and chances. But those, I remember a piece. This was Brazen. I think it was the Brazen Resilience season. I'm pretty sure. We had a piece in Wisconsin. It was this piece of public, and there was quite a few guys hunting it. It wasn't a very big piece. It was in what the guy asked earlier, the bluffs of west central Wisconsin, not far from the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And this particular piece, it wasn't a big piece of public, but it was a long walk in there, and it was a piece of MFL ground. And it was a long walk in to before the MFL. There was an access hike in. It was long, though, and you had to climb this long ridge. It was about a mile hike in there before you could even start hunting. So there was quite a few other guys hunting it. And we kind of realized that there was this tiny little sliver that if you climbed the ridge and then you dropped off the ridge, though there wasn't a lot of acreage, by the time hunters were climbing this long ridge in there, most of them would stay up on the ridge, hunting the ridge. And we kind of read this situation where it's like, well, if we go down the ridge to the bottom and then we could kind of come up the other side a little bit, and then that's where the public stopped, we kind of realized it's not getting pressured at all. And these bucks are coming off the private, hooking onto this MFL public. And then they're maybe staying on it for only 100, 150 yards, and they're looping right back onto this more private.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that particular case, we had to go in and hunt stationary. You could still hunt or stalk, still hunt your way in there. But what are you going to do when you're at the corner of the public? You're out of acreage.
No.
And these deer aren't, they're just coming on it for a short bit and going back off it. Well, we went in there and we had a rough spell, I guess you could call it, that season. And 11 of those, we had 18 or 19 bucks that we would have shot in bow range without an arrow leaving the bow or one arrow left the bow or something like that. And we didn't get that deer either. In that 10, I think it was 10 of those situations went down in that little corner of that piece of public over about an 8 or a 9 day period. We just kept hunting it. I mean, every day we were having another shooter coming in range, and we just could not. We could not, just like you're talking about, Dan. We're stationary on the ground, and we just could not pull off the shots because they would just jive, and we couldn't even get the shot pulled off, and we're stationary waiting for them. And also, I think when you're stationary waiting, I think a lot of times the mind can start to wander and not as on point. But once you got that visual, it very much keeps you engaged in the hunt and not trying your best to not make a mistake. But when you're waiting, it's kind of like easy to get sidetracked, think about whatever.
But when you're in a tree versus
you're caught with your pants down a little bit sometimes when that happens. So go ahead. Sorry.
When you're in a tree versus on the ground too, you can hear them coming. You can see them coming for a long ways off. And I think a lot of people don't get the hearing thing. The ground level, you don't hear them as far back because the brush covers the sound waves.
Sure.
And they get on top of you a lot faster. You know what I mean? From a stationary ground position than in a tree.
Sure.
And I think you're a little more prepared. It's almost like the spot and stalk versus the sitting there and waiting for them to come to you and not seeing them until they walk out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I didn't think about that from the sound standpoint.
You know what really taught me that was that there was a time when I was in the swamp, and you know when you walk through cattails, the noise you make in that muck is incredible. I mean, you're so loud. There's no way to be quiet when you're sinking to your knees and you're pulling this. Your boots are making this suction noise and stuff, and you're like, "There's no way I'm going to get to this island or whatever, and the deer aren't going to hear me." But you get there, and those deer still get up out of the beds and come in. And you're like, "Why?" I mean, you know, you're sitting in your tree, you can hear these deer coming for a mile, and you're like, "How do they not hear me approach?" But then on ground level on one of those hunts, or well, several of those hunts really, but one in particular, what really dawned on me. I'm out in his cattails, and I'm just standing there for a little bit, kind of contemplating my next move. And all of a sudden, this dude just comes popping out of the cattails right next to me. And I realized I never heard that guy coming. In a tree, I'd have heard him from a mile. All those cattails stopped that sound from getting to me.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Sound barrier.
So up in a tree, you're hearing that sound come up in through space to you. You know, where at ground level you're not, so they get a lot closer before you detect them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm just flashing back to I used to this. I was talking about that public land swamp I grew up by. Well, opening day of gun season, a lot of years we'd march way out into this pocket of tag elders, way out there, and it was always exactly what you just described. You're making so much noise, you think, getting in there. And it always blew. Jim and I did that a lot back in the day. We'd go way back out there, making so much noise to get in there. But we're kind of banking on the pressure pushing the deer in there, which is generally what happened. But, yeah, you think you are making a lot of noise. But I never really – I'm surprised I never really put that together. But, yeah, as soon as you climb that tamarack – like we had a few tamaracks out there. We'd climb way up, and then it's like you can hear everything from way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
and that's when it's like, man, I made so much noise. You're thinking you're flushing all these deer out, and that also, you know, during gun back then,
be a porcupine.
A lot of times you're making the drivers in that type of stuff. We'd get to shoot a lot of times. Those deer, yeah, you know, I think back, what you just said makes a lot of sense. I think back in that era, a lot of times I think we thought that they were just holding tight until the very end, but maybe they just didn't really hear you that much. And then what they did hear thought was another deer. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think a lot of times we always thought they was just holding tight. You know, I don't know. I'm kind of replaying stuff in my head a little bit. That got me thinking there, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good place to stop here. You've broke the record here, Jared.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's completely fine.
It's expected.
We fully expected it, especially because of the $1. So
I was disappointed though when you took the piss break. I would expect a guy like you.
What's that?
Just sit there. I said I was kind of disappointed when you took the piss break.
Yeah.
I would have expected you to just sit there and piss.
I only pee myself for a big buck, Dan.
Not for the hunting beast. And is in the audience here. No, actually, we appreciate that you didn't do that. I mean,
me too.
we probably wouldn't have known, but either which way.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, it would have
No,
been
that would be weird if I did that.
That's all right. I mean, we all do weird things. You just don't tell anybody. Like, I ain't wearing no pants.
Yeah.
No, I'm not either. Yeah. That's amazing stuff.
What kind of show you guys running?
Jared, thanks a lot for coming here tonight. This was a fantastic show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We got to have you back on again real soon. And then next time we'll just do $3.
Yeah.
Because I know you got some more.
Maybe the ones that got away. You know.
Yeah. Well,
I thought about that after you asked me about the favorites. That I thought about it after I'd already picked those 5. I was like, wait a minute. What about all the ones that got away? Like some of those.
that's true.
That might be a good series.
That might be the next series because I was thinking the exact same thing. And what's funny is I'm probably more passionate about the ones that got away than I am about the ones that got. That's like old news.
Like
but
that big one you talked about earlier.
I mean, you don't get them. It like drives you nuts. You think about them forever. It just stay in your mind. They're like a legend with you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the ones that got away. And you know what? Maybe that'll be the next series after the top 5.
Yeah.
All right. We're not giving away any secrets. Jared, stick around here after the show so we can chat a little bit. But for everybody else, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hunting Beast Report. Stay tuned. We've got a show coming up on Thursday this week. A little special edition show for you. We think, right? Are we locked in on that yet, Dan?
He's locked in.
We are?
He's locked in, yeah.
All right, perfect. We got a show for you in 2 days here. And then we'll be back for one more show next Tuesday before Dan and I head out to Huntstock. And then we have another awesome guest coming right back the following Tuesday. So a lot of good stuff. We're going to keep this top 5 thing going. Jared, again, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Everybody else, we'll see you in 2 days.
See you, everybody.